Hi everyone, welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. We're back again. My name is Wendy O'Connell, and our guest today is Petria Mitchell. Many folks in town know Petey from many different places. Petey is an artist whose luminous and atmospheric paintings welcome us into the worlds that she creates. Petey is also a community player, supporting, creating, and collaborating with artists, organizations, and people in the Brattleboro area and beyond. In the late 80s, she was a founder of Windham Art Gallery on Lower Main Street, and 25 years later, with her husband, Jim Giddings, she established Mitchell-Giddings Fine Arts Gallery on Upper Main Street. So, Petey, thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me here.
Yes.
This is really great fun.
Yes, it's great to have you on the show, and we're so glad to have you because I know that you and Jim are both busy with the gallery and busy with your own painting, and how you get to fit it all in, we don't know, but we're glad that you do. So let's start with, you were a kid in Greenwich, Connecticut, and then in Suffern, New York. For folks who don't know, Suffern is almost right on the border of New York and New Jersey, right? It's very
Pretty close, about 20 miles away.
Yeah, that's close. So what was your childhood like? You had a family with kids, other siblings?
Not many. Most of them were off in school or doing something else. So I had my brother Greg around. But I spent most of my time really alone up in the hills and painting and carving and
really
playing with animals, and yeah.
You were painting or drawing at an early age?
Boy, probably before 6 years old, but I remember some of the pieces I did when I was 6.
Yes. When you were doing art as a kid, did you go someplace, inside yourself, or
Well, I would spend, again, most of my time outdoors.
Yeah.
And I would bring that feeling of solace back into my room where I was painting. I didn't have a studio, it was my bedroom, of course, like most kids. So I would just make a horrendous mess there. I would make sure I was painting murals all over my own walls, which was really fun.
Is that in your family? Do you have artists or
My dad. My dad was a carpenter and a chemist. My parents' business was Mitchell Rand Manufacturing Corporation, but Dad would come home and spend most of his time either designing and building a boat or photography.
In your dad's business, he was a chemist. What kinds of things did he do?
He created compounds.
Compounds.
Yeah. He was really an inventor of different compounds. So my dad, believe it or not, invented crazy glue.
Was there anything at a young age that influenced you in the art world?
Just going to different museums and being really excited by seeing Georgia O'Keeffe or whether it was Sargent. I mean, so many different painters that I really respected.
Yeah.
With whether it was their imagery or their brushwork.
Right.
But Georgia O'Keeffe was somebody that I was really watching. Mom and Dad were really excited about the talent and the patience that I seemed to possess at an early age. So I would do private lessons with some wonderful painters that I can't remember who they are, though, but they were local in Suffern. Yeah.
And they supported you throughout, your whole interest in art.
Mom and Dad,
Yes.
Mom and Dad let me leave high school to go to school at the National Academy, which if I were a parent, I don't think I would let that happen. Probably not a great idea, but I had really early experience with going to New York and studying at a really wonderful, wonderful place.
That is most unusual, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Did you talk to them about that in hindsight? What their thinking was?
I talked to them through all the steps.
Yes.
From going out to breakfast and talking about saying, Petey, you do not seem happy like you're existing in high school. Because you're not able to do the English and the different classes because of dyslexia, that I was not able to really thrive in high school. So they let me stay by doing 6 different art classes, which was not legal, really, in that time in New York State.
Yeah.
So Mom and Dad said, let's find out really what we can do to massage what it is that you're really feeling comfortable with and good at.
Good for them.
Yeah, they were very kind that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you spent early, some of your teenage years in New York City studying art. What was that like for you? Because you probably were the youngest in almost every
I
group
was the
you're in.
youngest that was accepted on portfolio at the National Academy at that time. So I didn't know what that meant, really. But it was a wonderful time in my life.
When you were learning art, were you drawn in one direction or another?
I was studying the human form, anatomy, and so that was really a lot of the work that I was paying attention to and creating at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I had some of those pieces.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, sculptural or two-dimensional?
No, two-dimensional.
Well, let's jump into painting because it's been such a big part of your life and it's been practically your whole life. And one of the things that you said is that you're painting about places that are actually internal places that are not necessarily plein air, for instance, being out in nature or being outside and painting from nature.
I really love being out in nature.
Yeah.
And sketching and bringing it back into the studio. But I do paint outdoors too.
Do you?
Yeah. But that's mostly sketching. And then I go back into the studio. That's why I'm saying they're not places that are visited on foot.
Yes.
Part of my artist statement. That bringing in the headspace that I'm in at the time, where I was, bringing it back into the studio. For me, it just has its own continuum, where I'm starting there, being, of course, affected by what I was around in the sketches and bringing them back in, and then it's a totally new experience when I'm sitting down in the studio and painting there.
So it's a kind of reflection of where you've been?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
One thing about your paintings that I always notice, and I know other people do too, is the fact that there's a feeling, that atmospheric feeling, that and sort of ephemeral feeling, luminous quality, all of that. But there's also a feeling of being very grounded in viewing it, and I'm just wondering what your experience is in that.
Grounded? That's an interesting word. Yeah, because I'm not painting from an aerial view. If you're talking about physically grounded or spiritually grounded,
I think a little bit of everything. Actually, yeah.
Grounded. Yeah, because it's very often when I'm working with a lot of sketches that I brought back in and choosing the palette that I want to work with, because it's not necessarily what I was around at all. It's a pretty tender experience where I'm really nervous in the beginning and sometimes really depressed in the beginning, but then the veils come off very, very quickly, for me anyway.
Yes.
But so that's an that's an experience that I've had ever since I started painting, where it was like angst and then slowly just getting into the flow of what the paint and the surface is doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of a tightrope.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I fall off that tightrope a lot. For sure.
And do you have paintings that you do go back to maybe months or years afterwards?
Many of them, yeah. Matter of fact, if you look at some of them, you might, which I know many fellow artists do this too, you'll see crossed out titles, crossed out dates, and then new ones.
Yes.
Which is, it's fine. I mean, it's done when you feel that it's done.
Yes.
And it's ready to say, I'm finished. Yeah.
And do you have that feeling with paintings when you know that it's time to stop?
Sometimes.
Not always.
Not always.
Yes.
Yeah, especially if I'm working on deadline for a show.
Right.
And like the last curation of the pieces that will be installed, knowing that those won't make the cut, but they will be able to finish them up or change them to make them acceptable at another time.
You can revisit them at some point. Yeah. It's quite a process, right?
It's a really neat process, especially if I was working with a really tight composition. Very often I'll end up making it very atmospheric, which blurs a lot of what I might have felt that was unfinished or uncomfortable with, because I love atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
That really helps to be able to really mute something.
Yes.
In a functional way when I'm finishing a painting.
Very interesting, because also I would think that you've got the physical piece too. You know, you're holding the brush to the canvas, and the paint is either slick or it's starting to dry. So you're working with that part.
Oh, you
as
are
well.
raised by artists. You are. Yeah.
and having being able to have things mutable. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why messing around with the medium, whether you want it to be drying quickly or to stay workable, because I love edges. They need to.
Yes.
I really like when they're very greasy and they meld easily. Yeah.
Do you do underpainting?
Very often.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like to have a very warm underpainting. Sometimes it's purple and cool. The Lavender Hill series was part of that. And then, oh my gosh. The ones that are bright red, and then I leave a little bit of the red around all the edges.
Right.
That wasn't a series, but that's something I love to do.
How did you make it to Vermont?
With my first husband, when we were living in upstate New York, Norwich, I was studying with Jonathan Talbot, printmaking, and I was his studio assistant, so we traded that, and that was really, really wonderful. So I decided to get my own press and start my own printmaking studio, which we did. And Tom became really sick back then, not really understand green printmaking. The benzene and the nitric acid was something that was really, really made him very, very sick.
Oh, wow.
So, of course, my heart sunk because he was sick, but also because we had to stop printmaking, we thought. We didn't understand that there were different materials to be able to use to do printmaking, to do etching. So sold all the equipment, and then we moved. Kept on. Then, at that point, the house we were renting was being sold out from underneath us. So we went from town to town to town until we ended up in Putney.
Oh.
That's when we moved to Vermont. We moved to Rosemary Campbell's house in Putney.
To go back into that a little bit, you also did some scrimshaw etching.
I still do.
Do you?
I've been doing engravings for Froggy Bottom guitars, steel string instruments for almost 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you give a quick description of what that is, scrimshaw?
Well, the scrimshaw that I do is I do, whether it's very large pieces or very small, I'm just doing what's called heel caps and end grafts, which you have a neck that comes down and there's a piece of ivory, mammoth ivory.
On the guitar.
On the guitar. And then the bottom where you're attaching the pin where you have your strap. So I'll do end grafts and heel caps. So it's a process where you're scratching the surface. It's very simple because it was done on whaling ships. So it was very simple. You're scratching and you're rubbing paint into it and wiping it off of a polished surface.
Yes.
And then you have a really wonderful design.
Yeah, they're beautiful. And
it's really, I'm actually doing it today after I
really?
go back. Yeah, I'm finishing some work for Michael.
You still enjoy doing it?
I do, because I'm used to doing it. I mean, I'm not, it's not something that, it's more illustrative.
Yeah.
So it's satisfying, but creatively satisfying, it's not.
Yes,
really.
got it. It's a technique that
it's a technique that I have been written up in many books about scrimshaw, and I'm very thankful for that. But it's something that I'm much more of an expressive person with my artwork now.
Right.
And this is commission-based, mostly.
Back in the, I believe, late 80s, you started Windham Art Gallery with some other folks in town.
We got together and said, this is needed. And it happened. It was very needed. And we started with 64 artists, or 68, I can't remember.
Really?
A lot. Like every creative person practically that was in our little town and region.
Yes. And that was sort of the beginning of Gallery Walk too, wasn't it?
Yeah,
pretty close to that.
Remember. Yeah, but I can't remember how they coincided.
Yeah, me either. Yeah. But it was wonderful because you would have openings; they would be jammed with people.
Jammed, yeah.
Yes, that was really popular.
Yeah.
It was great.
It was a lot of fun.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now it's Echo.
That's right.
That's the Echo space, yeah.
Oh, interesting. That was the first of its kind, really, in Brattleboro. A small
pretty
art
much
gallery.
in our region too, I believe.
Really?
Because we were open for 20 years, and then open in '89 and closed in 2009. I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so many artists cycled through there as well. Yeah, it's really quite remarkable.
An amazing list.
Yeah. I remember actually a painting that you had in a show. I don't know, it was probably one of your first shows. It was
At WAG?
Yes, and it was small. It was about this big. It was $100, and I really kicked myself for not buying that now.
That's when we probably had that show that everything in the show needed to be $100, and
really?
everything sold out, I believe.
Oh,
yeah.
that's a great. That's a great idea, though. It's a really good idea. Yeah, really good idea. You also have had a long-standing relationship with Brattleboro Museum and Arts Center. Both you and Jim, your husband, have.
Yeah, and Jim will definitely, when you talk with him, explain how long he was working there. One of the first things we worked on was the Andy Warhol show in '04.
Oh, wow.
And that's when I was chair of exhibitions then. And I was for 8 years, and then Mara took over, yeah. But yeah, it's been a wonderful ride. I'm still in governance with the BMAC. And Danny's doing a great job, and so is Sarah.
Yes.
It's really the eclectic offerings. It's really something.
It is. It's remarkable.
It's really impressive.
Yes, it's very amazing to me the breadth of the different artists that are coming through there now, and you know it's had big names over the years.
Oh yeah.
Not even to mention Wolf Kahn and Emily Mason
and Red Grooms. I mean, my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the Andy Warhol show is really what put us on the map.
Also, most recently, a Keith Haring show of his subway paintings, which is kind of remarkable as well. I know. For a little town, right?
Yeah, right. We have a lot of connections.
A lot of connections. Also, I believe that you were one of the founders of Brattleboro West Arts.
Brattleboro West Arts, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's just been such a wonderful family of creative people, whether you're a ceramic artist, whether you're a jeweler, whether you're a painter, a sculptor.
Yes.
It's really neat. It's a neat group.
To me, it's very cool, too, because having lived in West Brattleboro back in the 80s, back then it was a village, and it's not like that anymore.
Well, we
but
have Stockwell's.
Stockwell's and Ziders, and the library annex was there. But to have something creative going still, I think is really wonderful.
It's neat because it is geographically based.
Yes.
West Brattleboro, and I don't know whether Brattleboro West Arts. Excuse me. I'm not sure if there's going to be a studio tour this year, but that is something that they were always doing, and that was really important. Whether it's with the state craft tour, I'm not quite sure, but they're always doing that, and we have potlucks every month. And we have a program that goes along with it that we either create together or discuss something that's really relevant to their creative lives, our creative lives.
That's so great.
So, yeah, it's a long-standing friendship with a group of really wonderful people.
In 2014, you and Jim started Mitchell-Giddings Fine Arts Gallery.
We did.
And that was, oh my gosh, it's almost 10 years ago. It's coming up to 10 years.
We're going to have a big celebration next year. Can't quite believe it.
I can't either. No, and it's such a beautiful space.
Thanks.
You did such an amazing job in renovating that space.
Thanks.
And for all of us, of course, who remember Candle in the Night was there for many years, which you've completely transformed. That was a great space, and you've transformed it into something that is so well crafted and so well done that it feels like you're, between you and Vermont Center for Photography, there's such an urban feel,
which is great.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah. I remember Wolf came to an opening and he said, "Oh, you brought Paris to Brattleboro." And I said, "Thank you, Wolf."
Yeah.
It was really a sweet thing for me to say.
For both you and Jim as painters, how was it for you to expand into that kind of space?
It's been transformative. When people walk in, plus, they're standing in the window and they're seeing these two archways that pull you right in to the East Gallery, which is, 300 feet away or something like that. That it's a beautiful space, and creating what's called the nest. You go up the steps and there's a place to rest, and architecturally it's really exciting to look at it. You walk in and go, what is that about?
Yeah.
And then it's a very beautiful space because there's windows above it. And it's not a flat roof. It's a bump that goes up. And there isn't any other space in Brattleboro really quite like that.
Right.
So we tried really hard to keep that architectural element in the space. It makes all the difference in the world.
Yes.
We were crunching numbers and said, should we keep this or should we just make it flat and just the office is here? And I'm just really glad we did that.
Yeah, because even if you don't notice it visually so much, you feel it psychologically going in there.
I agree.
Yeah, it gives a lot of airspace to the whole place. And you've had some amazing artists. I think you have like 30 artists in your so-called stable.
Yep.
And many of whom are either local or regional, but you've also gone further afield. Amy Arbus being one
She's
of them.
up right now.
Is she? Yes. And always eclectic, but always interesting.
Hopefully we can have it become more eclectic as we get into the digital age even more. Which is what Mutsu Crispin, Johnny DeGeorge really offers, which just opened in the last show.
With the lights,
yeah. And that's and the plexi, which is very neon.
Yes.
And that's really fun.
It's very interesting too, because so many things are headed in that direction in the art world these days. From the get-go, it feels like you've been part of working with the community in lots of different ways, whether it was Windham Art Gallery or Brattleboro West, or through the museum as well. And now with Mitchell-Giddings, I think one of the things that you do that's so interesting and so great for the community are the artist talks that you film. And they're shown on BCTV for folks. You can look in the archive and check them out. You've done several of them. And they're not just a quick little talk. They're over an hour usually. So you're really getting in there.
That's one of the most rewarding things that I think that we've done. The shows are great, but being able to give the artists an opportunity to be filmed for archival history where they can really show what they're about. And Andy Reichsman and Kate Purdy, and Kate Purdy, the editor, he's the videographer of Ames Hill Productions, we've been working with them from the beginning. We've done over 30 or something videos.
Wow.
I believe. I lose track. And they do all the editing, which is what Kate does. It's been a really important thing to do from the very beginning, and I don't think that we really understood until the last couple of years just how important it's been. Like when we miss one, like let's say if it doesn't work to be able to archive a talk with an artist that has a solo, there's a real hole in our memory, and so we try really hard to make that happen each show. Group shows, maybe not as much. I'm not sure if we're doing one for this one, but yeah, I find it to be a wonderful thing to reflect on all the time too.
Oh, I'll bet. And the thing that's great is that it's on film, and so you've got that to refer to.
And having
as
Emily
well.
Mason on film twice was just when doesn't do that was really amazing. We're very lucky
sweet
to have that.
Petey, an interesting thing about where you folks are in that building is that you have 4 different businesses there now. You've got First Proof Press, the Brattleboro School of Dance, Insight Photography, and Mitchell-Giddings Art. You've got a whole art thing happening. Up the street, we've got Hatch Space, right? And across the street, there's Epsilon Spires, just to name a few. But in that little triangle, it's a lot of art and it's a lot of community engagement. Yeah, can you talk about what it's like to be there?
A whole lot of creative input. It's just really exciting. And it's amazing what's happened just the last couple of years with Hatch Space opening on High Street and then Epsilon. So you can feel, or we can, feel the energy that is, and they're very eclectic. They're very, very different.
Very.
Very different. But having our building finally come to fruition after so many years of trying to make it work. I mean, we miss Larry and Donna a lot.
Yes.
And it has always been a condo and is a condo. So we're different owners that get together once a month and talk about what we're doing and how we're doing it. And it's going really well.
Yeah. Everybody seems to be thriving.
In our building, or the triangle of
both.
Both.
And the fact that each of you have so many different things going on is really fascinating. So many different creatives working. In the last couple of years, you were Entrepreneurs of the Year Award from Brattleboro Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, that's
I believe.
right. That was great fun.
It's pretty great to be acknowledged in that way.
It really was heartfelt. And that meant a lot.
And then just this last year, you got the Ewing Art Award.
We
2022.
did, which was a real surprise because it's for the gallery, for the presentation part of what the Ewing Awards offer. It's not for individual artists with us. And that was amazing. And it's an Arts Alive connection too with Jess Gelter, was on the stage, and we got on the stage and got this award. It was astounding to get that kind of award because it really meant a lot to to us personally.
Yeah, and
to our artists also.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The artists
yes.
that we work with, not our artists.
Well, they are. They're close to your heart. So,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So you've been here over 40 years. You've been here even longer than I have, 40 some odd years. Can you talk a little bit, if it's pertinent, can you talk a little bit about the changes that you've seen in Brattleboro, and maybe even just Main Street, Brattleboro, downtown?
Yeah. Some of it good, some of it sad, like Delectable Mountain closing down, and oh my gosh,
Hotel Pharmacy for one. Yeah.
Oh God, Hotel Pharmacy. That's a tough one.
Yeah, real hard one.
So many changes. Gosh, we had the Molosai, which was so much fun to dance, even when people were smoking down there. But it was really a fun place.
It was.
And Ransom Hastings, and there are many entities that still exist that we're just so happy that we're still sharing downtown as we are all getting older and figuring that whole piece out. But downtown, how has it changed? Well, from the Baptist Church going from now Epsilon, and then seeing the Stone Church, these places of faith that are turning into creative venues, is really something to behold.
Yes.
And see how well it's working.
Yes. Energy-wise?
Energy, meaning?
Yeah, meaning, when you're walking down the street.
Right now?
Yeah.
Oh boy, it's gone through so many changes.
It has.
Yeah. Pre-COVID, it was, it still is an energetic place, but it had a different energy because now there's a little bit more of a worry posture, it seems. But that seems to be, those wounds seem to be healing also.
Yeah.
But, oh my gosh, just different entities coming and going and seeing that. And the memories being wonderful. I still think of WAG, Windham Art Gallery, being open, but now you have Echo.
Right.
And you have a place to go and have a meal and have a drink.
Yeah.
But yeah, just all the memories of all the different places that have come and gone. And just knowing that River Gallery School moved from 127 down to the Wilder building and is doing really well.
Yes.
That's
I know there's a lot of exciting things. I have to say that one thing that really strikes me in talking to you and talking about all the different things you've done is that you've really, you're so connected to this community, and you've done so much for this community, whether it was at the museum or Windham Art Gallery, everything that you've talked about, and now having your own place. And I think that I get the feeling that for you, it's important to gather people together and also bringing artists into the mainstream of our town. Yeah.
That's really the reason that we wanted to create the gallery. Because the experience with Windham Art Gallery was wonderful, and it was closed, and being around other artists and how they bounce ideas off of each other, the artistic community is really nurturing and healing on so many different levels, whether it's internally or externally. But and the amount of artists in this region, in this town, is astounding. So there's a huge population. Speaking of the creative economy, it's overwhelming almost. It used to be, we used to joke because we have the retreat, that every third person was walking down the street was either a therapist or an artist. But so that's really a fun thing. People that feel and think. I really like that. But.
Yes. Well, and I think that we really we are really grateful for what you've given to the community and for the presence that you have here in the community. And again, making those connections, whether it's through art or just through welcoming people through the door, So thank you, Petey. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. It was great fun.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, indeed. Thanks to all of you for joining us today with Petey Mitchell. Mitchell-Giddings Fine Arts Gallery is right on Main Street. What number Main Street?
181-183.
Okay.
It's 2 numbers.
Stop in. It's just a wonderful experience to go in there, and it's an oasis on Main Street. So thank you for joining us. We will be back again. Remember to stay tuned to BCTV. We've got a whole bunch of really different kinds of shows all the time, and new ones happening all the time as well. So thanks for being with us today.